Alright, and welcome back to working with Microsoft Excel. In this particular video, we're starting the first of a 4 to 5 part series looking at importing information into Excel and some of the various file formats that we can work with to include XML as well as other text files. We're also going to look at some power add-ins. So first we're going to be working with some external data. I want to clarify a couple of key terms in relation to how we import data or how we embed data in there. So importing is the inserting of external data created or stored in another format into our current application. Embedding is importing external data into Excel, but not maintaining a link to the original data store. So please keep in mind the difference between those two terminologies and what they refer to. So in this particular chapter, we're going to be looking at importing data from some various external sources. We're going to be looking at text files. And essentially, text files everybody's familiar with is just a data file containing characters in some sort of format. They can be alphanumeric, numeric, symbols, etc. And they're going to have some kind of meaning behind the data and how it's depicted in the file. Another term I wanted to discuss about is the use of delimiters, and those are basically a special character, whether it be a tab or a space or a comma, that basically serves as an indicator to the application that there is some separation of data. So we're going to be looking at tab delimited data. We're going to be looking at a specific file format called comma separated values, often referred to as CSV files. And again, those just use employ commas to separate the data into columns. And then we're going to be looking at a fixed width text file, and that essentially is your text file. Each column is a certain amount of characters, fixed number of characters, in order to indicate where the start and end of one column or one field begins and one other one ends. We're also going to be looking at how to import data from an Access database table or a query. And that's just going to give us the ability to kind of import large amount of information from a database. And again, as noted down here in the slide, that data in the Excel worksheet can be maintained through the establishment and the maintenance of a connection to the database. There are some other sources where you can retrieve or import information into Excel. This can be via SQL Server, XML file format, etc. We'll look at XML files as we get in here. Another component of importing and embedding data in there is the management of connections. So as you notice through your data tab in the Excel program, you can specify some connection properties, and that will allow for how the data is imported in there and the type of connection that gets maintained, so that as the data gets updated, you can go in there and refresh that data and update the data from the source. One thing to keep in mind and always note is that a lot of times your external data is dynamic in nature. It changes. And how you go about maintaining the currency of that data in your Excel application is going to depend on what type of source that you have. It is a database connection, then obviously there are ways to manage that through the Excel application. If it's strictly a text file, may require the re-importing or embedding of the data from the source file itself. So again, one thing to note is updates in the external data sources are not automatically updated in Excel. Those need to be refreshed, and those only refresh through a maintained connection to the source database. So again, refreshing the data updates the linked data in the data source in Excel that will pull the most up-to-date information. So let's go ahead and move on to how we import information in here. So the first file I want to look at is a text file, a very common file that we're used to in dealing with Excel, and that's called a comma separated or a CSV file. So I'm going to go to my source directory here, and I have sales team underscore CSV.csv. I'm going to go ahead and click open. And it's going to give me the default in a CSV file is Excel will go ahead and based on the appearance or the placement of those commas within the in the file itself, it will go ahead and use that as the delimiter and go ahead and import the data into our spreadsheet here. So we have a listing of our salespeople, first and last name, position, and I'm going to assume that this is a commission percentage here. So that's one way you can import a file in here. One problem or one potential problem with the CSV file is if you have data that does have a comma in there that is not indicative of the beginning of the end of one column and the beginning of another, it could skew your information as you import it into Excel. So there's one instance of importing a file in there. I'm going to go and I'm going to import a second file. The second file we're going to look at is called a tab delimited file. And this particular file is, as we mentioned, what a delimiter is. A delimiter is a character, a special character of some sort that gives the application notification that this is the end of one column and the beginning of another. So I have sales team underscore tab.txt. I'm going to click open. Now in this particular type of import here, it's going to give me an import wizard that's basically going to ask me what type of import. Am I dealing with a delimited file? Am I dealing with a fixed width file? So again, I'm going with a delimited file. We're going to start at row 1. I'm going to click next. And as I mentioned, this is a tab delimited file. So I'm going to keep my delimiter selected as tab. Again, if we had this delimited by a comma or a space or a semicolon or even another character, we could go ahead and indicate what that character might be. So again, it gives you consecutive delimiters to treat as one. So if you have multiple delimiters in there, you can select that option. And then our text qualifier again is indicated here. We click next, and it's going to give us the ability to specify what your date format for each one is. So you can go through and you can select what type of format that you want to go ahead and apply to your information. So I'm going to select text for all of these, and then you can select it advanced for your date format for those. If you have a date format, you can also indicate if you want to skip a particular column. Gives you that option. But once you go ahead and click finish, it will then import your file. If you did not specify your data formats, whether it be text, numeric, percentage, and accounting format, you can go back in and do that in this particular manner. But there's how you import a tab delimited file into Excel. And again, you can manipulate your data as such. Our third and final type of text format that we're going to go ahead and open is going to be a fixed width delimited file. And again, in this particular instance, our columns have a fixed width. And I'll show on the source file here how that is apparent. So again, based off of your information here, you can actually adjust where you want the columns to go ahead, from one column to end and another column to begin. So again, it gives you kind of the ability to go ahead and format your data accordingly. Click next, and again you can specify the data types and finish the import. And you'll notice down here on my worksheet it has that information in it. What I want to go ahead and show in this particular instance is the actual source files themselves. So the first one that we actually opened, it's the CSV file. If you right click on that file, you can actually open this particular file with a standard text file, such as Notepad or WordPad. I'm going to select Notepad. And again, you'll notice the source information. Here we have our first name and last name and position all separated by a comma. So that's how the application via the CSV file knows where one column ends and the other column begins. In our tab delimited, again, I'm going to go ahead and open this with Notepad. And you'll see that there is, in this particular file structure, there is a tab that is available in this particular file format to separate the data. And then finally, our fixed format. Again, we open this with Notepad. You'll notice that again that I have a fixed format. It looks very similar to the tab, except that in this particular, it's spaced out according to the a fixed character width for each column. So there in itself.